After the pandemic, I took up a job as a food delivery driver to help with my family's financial crisis. I had a motorcycle, so I opted for unemployment. I studied during the day and worked as a delivery driver in the afternoons and at night. The job was full of surprises. Strange people, dangerous places, and sometimes the unexpected. One night, I received an order that seemed a bit off. I picked up the food from the restaurant and headed to the address the app indicated. It was in a remote area, mostly covered in dense bush. I didn't know anyone lived out there. As I drove deeper into the area, it became more and more abandoned. There were no streetlights, and the only light came from my motorcycle's headlamp. It was hard to see the house numbers, but eventually, I found the address. A 2-story house in terrible condition. The front yard was overgrown with grass, and everything was pitch black. I got off my motorcycle, clutching the food tightly. I approached the door and knocked several times, but no one answered. Suddenly, the door swung open on its own. Inside, it was pitch black and smelled terrible. From what little I could see, the place was a disaster. No furniture, just garbage on the floor. I was about to leave when I received a message from my boss. It said in capital letters, "Get out of there. Don't go inside. Go back now." My heart raced. I tried to run back to my motorcycle, but something grabbed my leg and pulled me down. I couldn't see anything, but I felt an immense force trying to drag me inside. I screamed for help, but I knew it was useless. The subdivision was completely abandoned, and no one could hear me. I had no choice but to fight for my life. I grabbed the floor with my fingers and kicked with all my strength until I finally broke free. I ran to my motorcycle and sped off without looking back. On my way home, I kept receiving messages from the app's owners, asking if I was okay and if I needed help. I couldn't answer until I finally got home, pale with fear. I replied, "Where the hell did they send me?" They apologized, saying they hadn't noticed that the app had once again ordered food to an address that wasn't theirs. 2 other delivery drivers had disappeared under the same circumstances. No one could find them, not even the police. There was no trace of them or their motorcycles. I handed in my resignation that same night. After several days of trying to get over the trauma, I began to investigate these disappearances online. There were all kinds of theories: extraterrestrial beings, abductions, alternate realities, cults, and demons. I honestly can't tell you what it was that pulled my leg, but I'm sure it wasn't human. Draw your own conclusions. If you're enjoying the video, please subscribe the channel for future videos, and like and share with your friends. Hey, my name is Ramon, and a few years ago, I worked as a delivery driver for a famous pizzeria in the north of Mexico. I prefer not to mention the city, but one afternoon, as it was getting dark, we received an order to a home address. My other 2 colleagues rejected the order because the place was far away and in a dangerous neighborhood. But I was the one who always accepted all the orders, so this time was no exception. I left the pizzeria with the pizza and headed to the house. The neighborhood was dangerous, and it was noticeable as soon as I entered. I couldn't see anyone outside their homes. I arrived at the address and rang the bell. It took a few minutes, but eventually, a woman in her 40s opened the door. She was in a bathrobe, a bit hairy, and looked very nervous. Her voice trembled, and she acted strangely. She was kind, but something was off. I handed her the pizza, and she tried to tell me something with her eyes. I started to feel tense because the situation was very strange. She told me to wait at the door while she went to get the money. I waited patiently, but after a few minutes, no one came out. I was getting impatient because it was too late to be in that dangerous neighborhood. I wanted to leave. Suddenly, I heard the same woman's voice saying, "Can you come in for the money?" I replied that I would prefer to wait outside, but she insisted that I come in because she had her hands full. Reluctantly, I entered, walking slowly down the corridor. The further I went into the house, the worse it smelled. There were clothes scattered everywhere, cigarette butts, and beer cans on the floor. When I reached the living room, there was no one there, but the TV was on without any sound. I saw the money on the dining room table and went to get it. But when I turned around, There was a guy twice my height, with a long beard and a very unhappy look on his face. He was standing in front of me, blocking my exit, holding a hammer. When I saw him, I felt sheer terror. It took me a few seconds to react. The guy was just staring at me. When I finally managed to speak, I said, "I'm the pizza delivery guy. I'm going to leave." The man laughed and said, "You're not leaving from here." I saw the woman in the kitchen, crying and begging me for forgiveness. I asked them what was happening and why I couldn't leave. The man started to approach me, saying, "Thank you, my wife. She told you something, right? Now I can't let you go." I told him I didn't know what he was talking about and that the lady hadn't told me anything. I begged him to let me go and promised I wouldn't say anything about what happened. But the guy had me cornered. I was shaking, feeling like this was a nightmare, that it wasn't real. The lady tried to tell him that she hadn't said anything, but the guy immediately fell for it, rudely telling her to get in the kitchen. She kept crying and apologized again. The man left, and I kept begging him to let me go. He threw me to the floor and tried to tie me up with a long rope. But when he wasn't looking, I grabbed a beer bottle from the floor and smashed it on his head. The guy fell to the ground, and I ran out of the place with all my strength. I started the motorcycle and went straight to the pizzeria. I called the store to tell them what had happened and to call the police. When I arrived, there was already a patrol car waiting for me. I told them what had happened and asked them to go to the house because I thought there was a woman in danger. They sent a unit there, but things were much worse than I imagined. In that house, they found the remains of 5 women. One of them had been there for a long time, while the most recent one had been killed just 2 days ago. The news came out in the newspapers and on television. It was about an ex-soldier who, with the help of his wife, kidnapped young women and took their lives. According to him, they no longer served a purpose. How could I have imagined that? Thanks to me, a criminal of that magnitude was discovered. To this day, I still can't believe it. Even after years of therapy, I still get nauseous when I remember that situation. I resigned after that, and little by little, I've been overcoming the trauma. Back when I was a student, I worked as a pizza delivery guy in my city. It helped me pay for my school materials. One afternoon, the pizzeria got an order for a small ejido outside the city. Since there were no other delivery drivers available, I had to take the order. As night fell, I realized I was getting farther and farther from the city. I followed the route they gave me, turning onto a dirt road between the mountains. Once I left the main road, everything was pitch black. Suddenly, with the help of my motorcycle's headlights, I saw an old lady standing by the side of the road, deep in the bush. She looked like she needed help. I started to slow down, but I felt a chill run down my spine. The closer I got, the more terrifying she looked. She was wearing a white coat covered in red stains. Her long, gray hair was messy, and when I saw her face, I realized she was smiling at me and waving me over. I shuddered and accelerated, but as I pulled away, I saw in my mirror that the lady started running toward me, laughing. The lady was running with incredible speed. She didn't look elderly or normal at all. She looked macabre, like something out of a nightmare. I accelerated as fast as I could, trying to get away. She was laughing maniacally, and when I looked in the mirror again, I saw her slowly rise into the air and then vanish completely. I finally reached the public lighting at the turn and delivered the pizza. The lady who received it looked worried. She saw how scared and agitated I was. She asked if I was okay, and I told her about the old lady who had followed me. I asked if there was another way out of there. She stared at me, then told me that many people had seen the old lady on that road at night. She would appear, run toward them, and then vanish into the darkness. It was rumored that she was a witch who had burned to death in her home. People had gathered to finish her off because she was suspected of many child disappearances in the town. But she hadn't left completely. It seemed like she had been immortalized. I was dumbfounded. I told her I just wanted to get out of there safely. She called her husband, who kindly explained another route to the highway. It was much longer, but I didn't care. I just wanted to avoid that area. I thanked them and left. Thank God that witch lady or whatever she was didn't appear to me again. I told my coworkers what had happened, and they believed me because of my scared face. I continued working there, but I never accepted deliveries outside the city again. Who knows what else is hidden on the outskirts? Good night, everyone. This terrifying situation happened to me a year ago when I started working with a new food app in Texas as a delivery driver. I applied and they accepted me right away. I was excited because, after a long time, I had finally landed a well-paying job. But my happiness was short-lived. On my first day, I realized that the places where people ordered food were homes, not restaurants. At first, I didn't think it was weird. I thought that's what the app was for, to help people with their own food businesses who didn't have a restaurant. I assumed they were what's known as dark kitchens, but there was something strange. On my first day, I had 2 deliveries. Both times, when I went to pick up the food, no one came out to give it to me. It was just left outside where I could see it and take it. I never saw anyone, and when I arrived at the delivery addresses, the people who came out to receive the food looked very strange. They just came out, took it, gave me a tip without saying a word, and went back inside. Everything was very odd, but I decided not to give it much thought. After all, I had just received political asylum in that country, and I was happy to have a job. The next day, I had only 1 delivery. I had to go to one of the same houses where I had picked up food the day before. Again, no one came out to deliver it to me. It was already ready in the same place they had left it the day before. I took it and headed to the delivery address. But this time, no one came out. A guy told me to leave it outside the door, and that's what I did. His voice sounded very unfriendly, so I left immediately. This went on for a week. I kept going to those same addresses to pick up the food and deliver it to different parts of the city. Until one day, a patrol car stopped me. I hadn't realized that my motorcycle's taillight was out, and driving like that at night is illegal. They asked for my license and interrogated me. They asked what I did, and I told them I was a food delivery driver for an app. They asked me to show them the app, and then they checked the bag where I had the food. When I opened it, we were all totally shocked. There were 2 human fingers and a piece of meat that looked very strange. They immediately handcuffed me and took me away in the patrol car. I explained that I had no idea what was in the plate, but they told me not to say anything until I could give my full statement. So, I told them everything from beginning to end, just like I'm telling you now. With the help of my cell phone, they found the addresses where I had been picking up those dishes. That's how they realized that those people were selling human meat. They had invented the app to be able to sell it without raising suspicion. All the people who liked to consume that knew perfectly well that through that app, they could fulfill their cravings. They released me the next day because it was proven that I had nothing to do with it. I was just a worker who didn't know the truth. The story came out on the news. It was about a couple who worked in the morgue. Both were forensic doctors, and they took advantage of their jobs to steal body parts that no one was going to claim or those that were about to be burned. Their relatives wouldn't realize if their deceased were missing parts or not. The couple was arrested, and an investigation was opened. Those days, I was very depressed. I couldn't understand why that kind of thing happened to me. I will never understand the kind of people that exist around us and their strange tastes.